You're listening to The Stephen Torriello Show, building a platform of liberty for people in search of truth with a dash of hope and a life worth living. The Stephen Torriello Show. And now, here's Stephen.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. So, as America continues its decline into complete bedlam by what seems to be some kind of Cloward and Piven strategy, the Biden administration has made some major sweeping changes to Title IX, has passed more student debt relief to the tune of billions of dollars, and an article from Politico states that the Biden administration has basically come out and admitted that we're essentially just funding another endless war just because we can. So I am one that believes that nothing is a coincidence and that these protests are a Cloward and Piven type strategy. And what is the Cloward and Piven strategy? If I'm not mistaken, I think we did a show on Cloward and Piven not that long ago. Maybe it was a while ago. But anyways, for those of you that are just tuning into the show for the first time, or maybe you missed that episode, we're going to go over it again because I think it's really important that people know and understand the situation we're in because these people are very smart. We're dealing with an entire administrative state. This fourth branch of government is behind all of this. And you have to remember that these people are clinging on to power. And the biggest threat that they face right now is the 2024 election. And I remember telling you that the closer we got to this election, the more wild things were going to get. And I was not joking. These people are willing to burn it all down. And I think that's exactly what they're trying to do. Almost as if like a failsafe. If they don't get what they want, they are going to sabotage the entire thing. And I think this Cloward and Piven strategy is a strategy to not only distract from what the Biden administration is doing with these really radical things that they've been pulling off the last week or so, but I think it's also designed to create chaos and bedlam so that it creates unrest and destabilizes the cities, just like the summer of 2020, the BLM riots. And in fact, I actually have an article that gets into just that. But before we get into that, I want to go back over what is the Cloward and Piven strategy. So the Cloward and Piven strategy is a political strategy outlined in 1966 by American sociologist and political activists Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven. And Piven is P-I-V-E-N. So their strategy proposed to rapidly enroll the poor in the United States on welfare programs to create a political crisis that would lead to legislation replacing welfare with a guaranteed annual income and thus end poverty. So you might be asking, well, we don't see anything to do with welfare. These protests are anti-Semitic protests. Well, they did start out as pro-Palestinian, but then rapidly evolved into anti-Semitic, almost kind of Nazi protests. And it's getting bad, folks. When you watch the footage on social media, it is getting bad. I mean, these people are targeting African Americans all the way to not allowing Jewish kids inside their classrooms to a point to where they're having to do out-of-class learning. So remote learning again. For somebody that pays $200,000 for tuition, they're going to be going to Harvard College online. It's insane, folks. So, Cloward and Piven published their article, The Weight of the Poor, a Strategy to End Poverty in May of 1966. In it, they argue that the mobilization of the poor and unemployed would put pressure on the political system, revealing the inadequacy of the existing welfare programs and force changes in the legislation regarding poverty. Their approach sought to use the existing system's rules. Now pay attention to this. This is important. Their approach sought to use the existing system's rules and regulations to push more radical reform. While the strategy was aimed at achieving beneficial social changes for the disadvantaged, critics from both political and academic spheres have argued that the method was overly radical and could undermine the social fabric. The Cloward and Piven strategy has remained a topic of discussion and controversy, often cited in debates on social policy and government welfare programs. It is also sometimes referenced in broader political rhetoric, especially within American conservative circles, as an example of tactics used by the left to provoke government change. So you might be saying, well, this has nothing to do with welfare. But the thing is, folks, is this strategy could be used for anything. The main driver behind these protests is the Cloward and Piven strategy to create chaos, because as you know, those who create the chaos control the chaos and ultimately get their desired outcome. But what I think the main goal I think that they want to get out of this is to have these protests and this unrest spread out into the major cities, the blue cities across America. Why? So that we get exactly what we got in 2020, 6 months before the election. The BLM and Antifa riots of 2020. You know, the riots they used to call the Summer of Love. So all these pro-Palestinian protests around the country, like I said, have rapidly escalated into these pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist protests. I mean, these people are literally pulling down American flags, and they are raising in its place Hezbollah flags. Hezbollah, as you know, is a terrorist organization, and it has been deemed a terrorist organization officially by the United States. So it is classified as a terrorist organization. We went through that not too long ago as well. Same thing with Hamas, same thing with Hezbollah, same thing with Al-Qaeda and ISIS, all of them. All of them are classified as terrorist organizations to the United States. And they tore down an American flag and in its place raised a Hezbollah flag. So this is what I'm saying. It has rapidly evolved into this insane terrorist protest, pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, anti-Semitic protests, right? And when you look at the footage, all the kids are wearing masks or kofefis or whatever you call them, the Middle Eastern scarves, the hijabs. I'm not sure exactly what the name is, but I mean, they look like a bunch of white terrorists. These are not MAGA hat wearing Republican conservative protesters. These are all Biden voting Democrats. And I think it's important for people to see that. And the Democrats also see that as well. And they're starting to change their tune a little bit when it comes to these protests. And listen, the polls are starting to show that Democrats are increasingly worried about these protests affecting them in the upcoming election. And they should be, because it is affecting their election prospects. But what I don't like is how Democrats and the Biden administration get to just brush things under the rug, quickly fix things just to win an election, and then right afterwards, everything goes back into complete chaos. But we're not going to be having that here. These people must pay the political price for this, just like all the other things they've done, and they must pay the political price for. More notably, COVID. Nobody should ever forget or ever forgive what the Biden administration did to the American people during COVID. But I digress. We're going to maybe talk about that in a later episode. But anyways, so these protests that were supposed to start out as pro-Palestinian, whatever it started out to be as pro-Palestinian, they've turned into pro-terrorist protests, pro-Hamas protests, because the left never knows when to stop and always takes things too far. But we're going to dig into the 5 W's and get to the bottom of this strategy. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you know just as well as I do that all of this is a purpose. It is not a coincidence. It's all for the election. And those who create the chaos, like I said, control the chaos. But you'll be happy to hear that the DOJ is targeting the protesters, just not the protesters taking over these colleges. No, they're still targeting J6 protesters. So before we get into the main crux of all this, before we get into who's behind these protests, I found this absolutely shocking. So this came out May 1st, and this is hat tip to Julie Kelly for posting this on her Twitter, but this is from justice.gov. So as you would probably expect that protesters, the these pro-Hamas protesters in these colleges that are overtaking entire universities and setting up encampments, destroying private property, trespassing. You would think that the Department of Justice would be pretty busy going after all these people. No. No, they are still targeting J6 protesters. So hat tip to Julie Kelly. This is from justice.gov. Florida man arrested on felony and misdemeanor charges for actions during J6 Capitol breach. What year is it? It's 2024? Think about that. 3.5 years, and they are still hunting down Republican Trump voters. While we have complete bedlam in colleges and universities, and it is all organized. It is all funded. All of it is one gigantic conspiracy. It's what we're dealing with. It goes around full circle. So a Florida man has been arrested on felony and misdemeanor charges related to his actions during the breach of the U.S. Capitol on January 6. His actions and the actions of others disrupted a joint session of the U.S. Congress convened to ascertain and count the electoral votes related to the presidential election. Michael Hennessy, I think that's what you would call it. It's Hennessey. Hennessy? That's actually a pretty cool name, if it is Hennessy. So Michael Hennessy, 38 years old, of Palm Harbor, Florida, is charged in a criminal complaint filed in the District of Columbia with a felony count of civil disorder. In addition to the felony, Hennessy is charged with misdemeanor counts of entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly and disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly or disruptive conduct in a Capitol building or grounds, and parading, picketing, or demonstrating in a Capitol building. Isn't that crazy that this guy's getting charged for picketing or demonstrating in a Capitol building? How many protests have we seen from Democrats and these pro-Palestinian protesters? How many Democrats have we seen picketing and demonstrating on Capitol grounds? And are any of them being charged? No. They're still targeting J6 protesters. The justice system is so unbalanced, folks. It is so two-tiered. It is so one-sided. It's awful. It is completely destroyed, all in the name of politics. We have a completely partisan justice system now, where one side gets away with protesting, picketing, trespassing, parading on Capitol grounds. They can do anything they want. Burn down buildings, take over police stations, take over courthouses, because all this happened in 2020, but yet it's Republicans and conservatives and Trump voters that are getting arrested, that are being hunted down and being sent to prison. We cannot function as a society with a two-tiered justice system. So that's what's going on with that. So the DOJ is targeting protesters, just not the pro-Palestinian protesters, but January 6 protesters. To get into the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, and why. I use the 5 W's whenever I'm looking into any story. If I get a lead on something and I want an answer and I'm in search of the truth, you just have to ask the 5 W's. The who, what, where, when, and why has been around for probably since millennia, since the beginning of mankind, because these are the basic fundamental questions to get to the source of the problem you are trying to solve. So here's an article from Darren Beatty over there at the Revolver News, and it's kind of long, so I'm going to kind of skim through this and just get to the real juicy parts. But I want to make sure we all understand where these things are coming from, because it's not just these protests that are being organized by NGOs that are essentially funded by the taxpayers. So imagine that. Your tax dollars are being spent to destroy your own country. And this is why I said months ago, and I forget what video it was that I posted on social media, but the American people are having to sit idly by and watch their country be destroyed, and they're paying for it. And this is exactly what I mean when I say that. So here's an article that came out today, about 9 hours ago. It says progressive group busted instructing pro-Hamas students to recreate 2020's Summer of Love, which was the BLM riots, the Antifa riots of 2020. You know, the mostly peaceful protests as there was buildings burning down in the background. These people, man, everybody notices it. Everybody does. Everybody can see the two-tiered justice system Some just don't like to admit it. And the ones that don't want to admit it are in denial. They are suffering from denialism, is what it is. So here we go. Those quote-unquote organic pro-Palestinian protests aren't looking so organic after all. It appears a progressive group from New York City has been stirring up trouble, rallying angsty, violent students to channel the infamous Summer of Love from 2020. Remember that? During the George Floyd riots, left-wingers set cities ablaze in the name of a career felon and drug addict, leading to 20 tragic deaths. So 20 people died during the 2020 Summer of Love. I hate calling it the Summer of Love because this is the left weaponizing the language. It was the riots of 2020. All right? It was the summer of 2020 where we had some of the biggest riots in U.S. history. And all of it was done by left-wing Democrats. That's right, Antifa and BLM protesters burnt down cities across the country, causing billions of dollars in damage. I am not going to call it the Summer of Love because that's exactly what the Democrats want us to do. So, to my conservative content creators and Republicans, you got to keep an eye on this. We cannot allow these people to control the language like this because they are very effective at it, as you can see when I'm reading a conservative outlet and they use the quote Summer of Love. We need to not use it. So during the George Floyd riots, left-wingers set cities ablaze in the name of a career felon and drug addict, leading to 20 tragic deaths. It seems history might be trying to repeat itself. And the same liberal instigators are at it again. According to a new report just before a group of aggressive pro-Hamas students charged into a building at Columbia University, they were urged to channel the quote-unquote summer of 2020. So just like Chicago during the Summer of Love, it all seems to follow the same script. So nearly 4 years ago, the George Floyd PSYOP was launched and a summer-long campaign of riots began. It's now come full circle. And here is a video of the 2020 riots after the death of George Floyd. Here, check this out.
And police clearly getting ready to go in. I've covered lots of this sort of stuff around the world, and I've never seen this many police moving into one area.
Okay, let's talk about the shot we're now. Hey, Miguel, this shot we're seeing now. Where is this control room? Where's this?
This is 114th Street, east of Broadway. So they are as close to campus as you can get.
So there you go. So this directive supposedly came from a nonprofit based in Manhattan known as the People's Forum, which has received a hefty $12 million from Goldman Sachs charity wing. This massive funding can be traced back to a figure named Neville Roy Singham, a man with strong Marxist ties. So there you go, folks. We know this is being funded by corporate globalists like Roy Singham. Goldman Sachs spending $12 million. This is a report from Ryan Saavedra. It says, breaking, anti-Israel group encouraged Columbia protesters to recreate the summer of 2020 hours before students stormed a building. The People's Forum's operations are made possible in large part by a $12 million donation from Goldman Sachs' charitable arm. The source of that money is likely Neville Roy Singham, a communist who has long admired Maoism. Singham, an American businessman who lives in China, reportedly helps finance the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda worldwide. According to the New York Times, his wife, Jody Evans, is the leader of the activist group Code Pink. Under her leadership, the group has celebrated China as a, quote, defender of the oppressed and a model for economic growth without slavery of war, unquote. That is a quote from the group. So you have an American businessman, most likely a billionaire, that lives in China that helps spread Chinese propaganda here in the United States. This is what we're dealing with, folks. American-born citizens going over to China and then assisting China in destroying our country. This man should be brought up on treason. Giving money to pro-terrorist groups in America, millions of dollars. And this would explain why yesterday I'm scrolling through social media and I see a post by somebody, I can't remember who it was, Robert Woods maybe, I can't remember. Anyways, the picture was of pro-Palestinian picket signs that were professionally printed. These were professionally made picket signs. The handles, the wood was brand new, the signs were freshly printed, and they were bundled up, and they were strapped together like 10 to a pack. And there was like 50 packs of these signs just laying next to a wall early in the morning. So somebody had set these signs out there for people to use. And it reminded me, do you guys remember back in the 2020 riots, the George Floyd riots, when there was this video that emerged of a pile of bricks that was neatly stacked next to a bush, right where protests were starting to take place. And then later, those bricks were actually used and hurled at cops through windows. Those bricks were actually used. So somebody set that pile of bricks there. Who's doing all this, folks, and why? Who, what, where, when, and why? The why is because they want to destabilize this country for the election. All of this is for the election. We don't have, you guys remember, for the last, 3 years, we haven't had any protests? None. There were none of these major protests. And if you don't remember, I think about 6 months ago, I said, watch, months before the election, we're going to have more riots. They're going to unleash the BLM and Antifa riots again. Now, I never would have guessed it would have been the pro-Hamas. I never would have guessed it would have been this. And I said this on a show a couple episodes ago. Was the attack on Israel, was it planned by somebody in the deep state, by somebody in the Washington establishment? That, ladies and gentlemen, would be extremely disturbing. If we had a conspiracy so vast and with characters and players so deeply embedded into the bureaucracy of our government that they managed to either incentivize or direct Hamas to attack Israel and kill 1,200 Israelis, to slaughter 1,200 Jews, all in the name of creating unrest in the United States. In 2024, this is going to be like the Super Bowl of elections. There's like 37 different countries all having elections this year. And they are major countries. And so this is the first time in, I think, recorded history where you had this many countries having elections all at the same time. And that's why I am 100% convinced that we haven't seen the worst of it yet. Things are going to get insane the closer we get to this election. Joe Biden is trying to imprison his political opposition. Nothing screams democracy more than trying to imprison your political opposition. These people do not care anymore. They're not willing to talk. They're suffering from denialism. I'm just wondering, how bad does it have to get for sane, rational Democrats to say, okay, this is enough. I've seen enough. You got the Biden administration and the government intel agencies coordinating and colluding with one another to try and imprison Joe Biden's political rival. Joe Biden's approval rating is the worst in U.S. history. It's like at 38%. That was lower than Donald Trump's. The lowest ever. And we're to believe that it doesn't look a little improper when Joe Biden is trying to arrest his political rival, when his political rival is beating him in the polls? And as of right now, clearly looks like he's going to win. All this is one gigantic conspiracy, folks. It is the Cloward and Piven tactic to create mass chaos to destabilize the country. And it serves so many different purposes. So you have a distraction, which now the American people, all people are talking about are these protests around these colleges and universities. But everybody's missing the bigger picture. The Biden administration is doing some really radical stuff inside the government bureaucracy right now. And it's all being done without the legislative body. So much for the defenders of democracy. I am so sick of the left. I am so sick of Democrats cheering out, yelling out the word democracy, threats to democracy, democracy this, democracy that. These people are the biggest threats to it. They're the ones destroying democracy. They don't even know what it is. They just say it because they probably poll tested it, and it's a trigger word for people. This is what these people do, man. I'm telling you, these people are so dedicated to manipulating and misleading the public. They've been doing it for decades. But now there's alternative media, which is something they were not anticipating, and they have no idea how to handle it. Because forever, these newspaper outlets, these media outlets, and CNN and MSNBC, ABC, NBC, they controlled all the information. But now they don't. And now they are losing their grip on power over the people because of alternative media outlets like this one. And so I think they're going to use the cloud and pivot tactic to create mass chaos, to distract people. And also what I think Joe Biden's going to do is when we get closer to election time, he's going to use all of these scenarios as a way to catapult him into higher poll numbers. Just the same way that he drained our strategic oil supply ahead of the 2022 midterms in order to lower gas prices so that he can go out and say, look, gas prices are being lowered more now than ever in history. When he actually can say that and not be lying because it was true, but it wasn't the full story. Okay, he wasn't telling you he was draining our strategic oil supply to dangerous levels, to which now there's like almost nothing left. It's the lowest on record. He didn't tell you that part. And he also didn't mention that it's because of his policies that increased the gas prices so much to begin with. And so this is what I think he's going to do months ahead of the election, is he's going to start putting out all these little fires. And then it's almost like the arsonist putting out the fire and then wanting to be celebrated for it. It's saying, hey, look, I put out the fire. Yeah. That's what he's going to do. And that's my prediction. So real quick to get back into this article, it's actually really long. So this coordinated effort shouldn't surprise anyone. There's always a group lurking in the shadows just waiting for their marching orders. As Mike Benz, the executive director of the Foundation for Freedom Online, aptly notes, it seems the Biden regime might be employing the CIA's Rent-A-Riot crew. That's funny, Rent-A-Riot. Kind of like Rent-A-Cop, but Rent-A-Riot. Employing the CIA's Rent-A-Riot crew to push forward their Marxist agenda. And here's a video of Mike Benz. I'm not going to listen to it here on the show because it's like 12 minutes long, but I will post this on my social media. He gets into the nitty-gritty when it comes to deep state operations between the CIA and the FBI and the ATF, the DEA, all of these different intel agencies and how they're weaponized in order to manipulate the public and to win elections and sway elections. Really, they are the world's bullies. And there is no doubt they're being used right now to entrap Donald Trump with the documents case. And that's something I wanted to get into on the next show. Or maybe if we can, we'll get into it on this show. But I will post this video on my social media, and I'll leave the link in my podcast description. Essentially, what Mike Benz wrote on his Twitter post is he said how the godfather of the censorship industry moved from the State Department to building Google Jigsaw's AI censorship superweapons to now creating a neo-Jigsaw inside Goldman Sachs. And then he goes through everything. And this is something else that I've really been digging into, is how effective is AI and Google into manipulating search engine results. This is a huge topic, folks, and it goes so deep. And I'm working on it as we speak. I wanted to dig into how the search engine algorithms are manipulating people in order to sway elections. And this is without a doubt Google, Microsoft, Bill Gates, all these massive social media platforms using their algorithms to sway the minds of the public. It is very, very concerning, and now it's all being done through AI. So it gets insane. But I want to go ahead and finish this article real quick, and then we're going to move on to some other things that the Biden administration has been doing while America has been distracted with these protests. So it's essential to understand how these puzzle pieces fit together. Seeing the big picture is our first step towards gaining control and outsmarting this machine at its own game. Agreed. We don't need to resort to violence or become unhinged to win. Our strategy should be to shine a light on their shadowy operations. These types thrive in darkness, and once exposed, their power significantly diminishes. Let's reveal their hidden webs for the world to see and strip them of their power. I absolutely 100% agree. The way that these people are fighting, they have never ever fought this battle with alternative media outlets. These people, like I said, they don't know how to fight against alternative media outlets. These people are so used to owning and using the information, and so they can bend it and twist it any way they want. When you have 5 billionaires that own all of the media outlets, all of them. There's like 5 people that own every single news outlet. But now when you have podcasts and YouTube channels, places like Tim Pool, Steve Bannon, Dan Bongino, this show here, now people have access to the truth. And that's all we do here, folks. I just give you the truth. Why? Because I feel like an informed citizenry is our weapon against this corruption. That is it. And just like Darren Beattie said, we don't have to resort to violence. All we have to do is just shine a light on all these secret operations. Because these people are very good at what they do. They're very good at entrapping. They're very good at shadow campaigns. They're very good at assassinations. And once they're exposed, that's when they lose their power. And the more people that are informed to the shadowy fourth branch of government, the weaker they get. And so we're not going to engage in violence. We don't have to. We are over the target, ladies and gentlemen, and we are punching these people right in the nose with all of this stuff. Every time a show comes out, every time we reveal another piece of their corruption, they get weaker and weaker and weaker. And finally, the entire fourth branch of government they've created is going to collapse on top of their heads, and they're going to lose power. That is when the American people get their country back. Because right now what we're dealing with, this is not what the framers had in mind. And Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex many, many years ago. I don't know if I ever played that audio for you, but he absolutely 100% nailed it. He said if the American people don't keep a close eye on this military-industrial complex that was building at the time he was president, it was going to control the world. And it is. That's why you have these wars. That's why you didn't have wars during Donald Trump. And you have this endless funding going to Ukraine, which is something I want to get into right now. Perfect segue. So now you know that these groups are all being funded by pro-leftist, left-wing groups, man. It's all Goldman Sachs, $12 million, radical left-wing groups, multi-billionaires that live in China. Like, this is who's funding all this stuff. Code Pink. Remember that word, Code Pink, because you're going to be hearing that name a lot in the future. So getting into endless war, I found this to be quite concerning. So this is from Politico. This came out on the 24th of April. The Biden administration isn't fully convinced Ukraine can win, even with the new aid. What? So you mean to tell me that we are essentially funding a war we know is going to be endless? Yes, in fact, that's exactly what they're doing. So despite the time and political capital spent on the $60 billion aid for Ukraine, some Biden administration officials are skeptical it's even enough for Ukraine to win its 2-year war with Russia. Battlefield dynamics have shifted a lot in the last few months, partly because Ukraine ran low on weaponry and ammunition while Congress debated authorizing more aid. According to 3 U.S. officials, all granted anonymity to detail sensitive internal thinking, During that period, Ukraine struggled to maintain eastern territory through Russia, though Russia didn't make significant gains either. Russia maintains a manpower and weapons advantage, and it would take a lot to reverse months and years of territorial losses. U.S. officials also asked questions about Ukraine's own tactics and priorities, especially after Kiev's counteroffensive failed, sapping forces of material and morale. Quote, the immediate goal is to stop Ukrainian losses and help Ukraine regime regain momentum and turn the tide on the battlefield. After that, the goal is to help Ukraine begin to regain its territory, said one of the officials. Quote, will they have what they need to win? Ultimately, yes, but it's not a guarantee that they will. Military operations are much more complicated than that. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers are also expressing concerns about whether more U.S.-provided weapons can lead to a Ukrainian defeat of Russia, or if it's just enough to temporarily fend off the invasion. That's the question, said a senior Democratic Senate aide. So they know that this is, ladies and gentlemen, are we all, we're pretty much, all of us know and understand that Ukraine is not going to defeat Russia. So what is this? Nobody knows what the plan is. What are we supposed to do? Just keep sending Ukraine hundreds of billions of dollars until the end of time? I said this before. I went on this huge, long rant about why we are all forced to live in this alternate reality where we're supposed to believe that Ukraine is going to defeat Russia. I mean, are these people nuts? The average fighting age for Ukrainian soldiers right now is 40 years old. You have Ukrainian citizens fleeing the country because they don't want to be sent into the meat grinder. This war is over. It is over. I'm so sick of this, living in this reality where we actually think Ukraine is going to what? Topple Russia? What is it supposed to do? Keep sending its children into the meat grinder until there's nothing left? These people have already sent hundreds of thousands of their citizens to their deaths. And they still are saying they're not going to surrender. In times of war, there's going to be a winner. And when you have a dominating force going up against a small country like Ukraine, it's over. Okay? So I'm so tired of living in this fantasy world where we actually believe Ukraine is going to defeat Russia. It's not going to happen. Russia can fight this war indefinitely till the end of time because it has 10 times the GDP, 10 times the manpower. Even Politico is admitting Russia maintains a manpower and weapons advantage, and it would take a lot to reverse months and years of territorial losses. So why are we doing this? Why are the American taxpayers flipping hundreds of billions of dollars to a country that's not even our ally? That's bizarre. I get it. We want to help the small countries from a bully. I can't stand Russia. I can't stand Putin. I think it's evil what he did, and it's wrong. But let's get real here. I mean, this is what happens. You have a overpowering country conquering another country. This has been going on since the dawn of man. I wish it wasn't this way. I wish there wasn't war at all, but this is what we got. And so I think from here on out, if these congressmen and women want to send money to Ukraine, let them take it out of their own pocket and stop taking it from the American taxpayer. Did you guys know that Ukraine lost 5 of our Abrams tanks already? Abrams tanks that were just sent in January. They've lost 5 already. And I think they were sent 10 or 15, maybe 20 tanks, Abrams. Not only that, but they were also sent secretly, without the taxpayers knowing, secretly sent long-range ballistic missiles to Ukraine. Are these people nuts? I think they want to start a World War III. I really do. These people need war. And I think everybody understands this. So why is it that the taxpayers didn't know that they just sent long-range missiles to Ukraine? Missiles that can go way far into Russian territory. That is the question. It's because these people want war. And this is the shocking part to me. You ready for this? These people legitimately think that we are supposed to fund this war forever. So this is an article from Just the News, which is John Solomon. Zelensky, U.S. and Ukraine working on security agreement and support levels for the next 10 years. So these people are already planning to be funding Ukraine for another 10 years. This is why the American people need to elect Donald Trump. We can't do this, folks. It is unsustainable that we borrow money from China so that we can give to another country, which we all know is being corrupted. Why hasn't there been an audit of all this money? Why? Why can't these people give us an audit? Because they know it's going to corruption. That's why. I think it's obvious, right? I mean, if we are sending money, that is like me giving somebody money to go run to Home Depot to pick something up, and then coming back without the thing I told them to go get. And when I ask for the receipt, they say, oh, no, I don't have a receipt. I didn't buy one. It's like, this is what we're dealing with. Nobody runs their finances this way. It's not that complicated. We need common sense fiscal responsibility, and we're not getting it from our Congress. These people plan on sending money to Ukraine for another 10 years? No, we can't do this, folks. So, Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky revealed that the U.S. and Ukraine are working together to draft a quote-unquote bilateral security agreement that includes fixing specific levels of support for this year and for the next 10 years. What, are we annexing Ukraine as the 51st state now? Are we adopting Ukraine as like the redheaded stepchild? So President Biden signed a foreign assistance package this month that gives Ukraine $61 billion for war against Russia. Also, our teams, Ukraine and the United States, are currently working on a bilateral security agreement, and we are already working on a specific text. Our goal is to make this agreement the strongest of all. We are discussing the specific foundations of our security and cooperation, he said in a statement released on Saturday. We are also working on fixing specific levels of support for this year and for the next 10 years, including arms support, financial, political, and joint arms production. The agreement should be truly exemplary and reflect the strength of American leadership. I am grateful to both our team and the team of the American side for the progress in drafting the agreement, he added. Zelensky noted that he had a conversation with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Quote, I thanked him and all of the congressmen for their support of our country and personal leadership in advancing a new package of assistance to Ukraine, he said. We are interacting with our partners at all levels to achieve the level of efficiency and assistance that is needed not only to hold our positions, but also to disrupt Russia's war plans. So this is it. So these people want the American taxpayer to fund Ukraine, essentially adopt it and annex it as a 51st state, so that we can send and rebuild and create an economy. Like, what the hell is going on here? Listen, folks, we need a plan by September. When this next spending package, which is most definitely going to be a omnibus bill, without a doubt, a continuing resolution, because these feckless Republicans don't know how to leverage their power and have given us no reason to vote for them come 2024 in the upcoming elections. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost the House and the Senate. Now, we can't allow that to happen, but they have given Republicans no reason to vote for them. What wins has Mike Johnson given Republicans? You're spending the American taxpayer into oblivion, and you haven't gotten any wins. You haven't secured our own damn border, and you're wanting to send hundreds of billions of dollars to another country's border? This is ludicrous, folks. That doesn't make sense. Nobody would run their finances this way. Nobody. We are in 35, 36, going on $37 trillion in debt with $1 trillion added every 100 days. And we're supposed to, these people are coming up with some type of written agreement where we're going to be funding Ukraine as like an ally for the next 10 years? No. These people are getting filthy rich off of our money. There's massive corruption going on over there. And we know this because of the CIA director that went over there, essentially going over there and telling the Ukrainians, like, look, you need to stop stealing more. You need to stop stealing all this money because the American people are starting to notice. And if you continue to steal money like this, we're not going to be able to send you any more. That's what happened. That's what that meeting was all about. It was a secret meeting. They went over there and discussed, and this is when Zelensky started firing his generals and firing the oligarchy. But folks, Ukraine has always been a corrupt country. Always. It has always been the piggy bank of corrupt politicians. This is why they essentially want to turn it into a 51st state. This is their bankroll. This is how these people bankroll. This is how they get kickbacks. This is why the Bidens were involved in the Ukrainian gas company Burisma. It's all corrupt. And they want to send money for another 10 years. This is what's happening in your Congress. I thought you should know. So while the protests were happening and the Cloward and Piven seems to be working and everybody was distracted, the Biden administration is working on insane agreements with Ukraine to fund them for the next 10 years. And not only that, but you also have the Biden administration unilaterally bypassing congressional approval, spending another billions of dollars on student debt relief. Here we go. And it gets much, much worse. So the Cloward and Piven tactic is working. So while everybody's focused on the Trump trials, everybody's focused on the protests, and I agree, I think people should be paying attention to all this stuff. But I also know that these people are very smart, and they're very evil, and they're very good at what they do. And I know that they're using the Cloward and Piven strategy to distract and create chaos so that the people don't pay attention to what's actually happening behind the scenes. So here's another article by John Solomon. He's been on fire the last few days. The cost of Biden's student debt cancellation could reach up to $1.4 trillion, report finds. So a new report estimates that President Joe Biden's plans to cancel student debt for some borrowers could cost taxpayers up to $1.4 trillion, depending on how the plans are implemented. The nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget estimated all Biden's recent debt cancellation efforts would cost a combined $870 billion to $1.4 trillion. Quote, that's more than all the federal spending on higher education over the nation's entire history, according to a report from the group. The vast majority of this debt cancellation was put in place through executive actions under President Biden. The group said about $620 billion of the debt cancellation has already been implemented. Quote, our numbers differ somewhat from our previous estimates, mainly because the president's plan to cancel $10,000 to $20,000 of student debt per person was ruled illegal by the Supreme Court, and the cost of his newest plan remains uncertain. So who's the threat to democracy again? Who is the dictator? That's right, Joe Biden, because Joe Biden ignores the Supreme Court ruling and continues to unilaterally spend American taxpayer money without congressional approval. This guy, I'm telling you folks, is the worst. And listen, I have student debt. I am a student that went to college, didn't finish, and I didn't get crap but a $17,000 bill. So I owe student debt, and I'm paying on my debt. And trust me, I would love to have my debts paid off for me, but I am not going to put that on the backs of my fellow Americans. I will not. I will not have it. That was my choice. I made the mistake, and I'm paying it back. I don't expect my neighbors to pay off my college debt, all right? I don't expect my neighbors to pay off my credit card debt or my mortgage. This is insane. This president is the worst. So the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget noted its $870 billion to $1.4 trillion estimate was close in cost to all projected education appropriations over the next decade, about $935 billion from 2025 to 2034. It estimated the cost of offering universal pre-K and universal affordable childcare would be $750 billion. Quote, as we have explained before, most of these student debt cancellation policies have not only been costly, but also inflationary, poorly targeted, counter to the mission of lowering college costs, and not financially justified. According to the report, instead of continuing down this road, lawmakers should work together on reforms that actually fix the student loan program and address the cost and quality of higher education. How about this? And I'm not even a lawmaker. Okay, I'm some random podcaster behind a microphone. Why don't you try this? Remove the interest from the student loans. That's it. Okay, the government shouldn't be making money off of student loan debt. Remove the interest and let people pay back the principal on their student loans. That's it. Why is that so hard? You would see a lot more people paying off their student loans if they didn't have to pay all the interest. Some of these loans, the interest is more than the principal. How that's even possible, I don't know. I think I still owe like 17,000 or 15. It's down pretty much. I think I owed 36,000. And so far I'm about halfway done paying it off. But a lot of it's interest, folks. So why wouldn't these people just remove the interest, zero out the interest, and have people just pay on the principal of their student loans? It wouldn't affect anybody. So nobody's making money on it. Okay, but at least you're getting paid back, the principal. This is what I don't get. But no, instead, the Biden administration, Joe Biden, signs an executive order, essentially an edict like some type of dictator, to force American taxpayers to pay off student loan debt for strangers they've never met, for people that have never asked them whether they should get a loan or not. I didn't go to the American people and say, hey, should I get a loan for college? Because if I would have asked them, they probably would have told me no. But this is the thing, man. It's so unfair. It is so bad. And not only that, but there's so many underlying issues that it creates. Number one, it makes college tuition extremely more expensive. Number two, because of this inflationary spending, what are you going to get? More inflation. The people are drowning in inflation right now. Okay, they're not sinking, they are drowning out there. And the Biden administration is going to spend another $600 billion on forgiving student loans for political purposes so he can win an election? He did the same thing in the 2022 midterms where he drained the strategic oil supply to bring the cost of gas down. And then as soon as the elections were passed, the prices went right through the roof again. These people are so deceiving. I think it's so disgusting how we have a group of leaders, an administration that would deceive the American people like this. So many different problems it caused, but $1.4 trillion by 2035, that's a big problem, folks. When we're spending $1.4 trillion on just education, on just forgiving student loans, it's insane. And mind you, do you think the education system has gotten better or worse since the Department of Education has been involved? You would be right. Way worse. Kids coming out of college and high school today, I'm sorry, but they're dumb. They are dumb. They know nothing about life. I can tell you 10 things that you could do right now to improve our education system. But this is the problem with government education. This is why public schools are so bad. Kids coming out of high school that don't know how to do nothing. They don't know what homeowners insurance is. They don't know how to apply for a job. They don't know how to fill out an application. They don't know how to apply for a mortgage. They don't know what interest rates are. They don't know anything about finances. They don't know how to start a business. They don't know anything about life. So they come out of school knowing these stupid things like algebra. Algebra is the most useless thing that a student could be learning. But yet it's the one thing that they have to do the most. Every single year they have to take some type of math course. Algebra or calculus or geometry. They're never going to use that stuff. What they should be doing is allowing high school students to advance into what they want to do as a career. So if somebody wants to be a lawyer and they want to go in that direction, then in high school they should be able to take classes that help them advance in that direction, right? So essentially turn high school into junior college. That's what it's supposed to be. And allow them to take these elective courses. If somebody wants to go in to be a doctor, allow them to take some medical courses. All right? And then what you do is you turn college into a special niche. So for like teachers, they would have to finish their final 2 years. For doctors, they would have to finish their final 4 years of med school. And for lawyers, they would have to go to law school. Right? But turn high school into a place that actually teaches kids how to function in society. So when they get out of high school, they can start their career path. Or if they don't, then they could start a business. And they'll know how to file for an LLC. Or they'll know how to do a fictitious name change. Or they'll know how to start a 501c3. Like, this is what they should be learning in high school. But the government has destroyed our education system. Just like the government has destroyed our finances, The government has destroyed our intel agencies. The government's destroyed everything it touches. The government destroys. The last thing you want to hear from the government or Congress is that they are funding a private program, because you can almost guarantee that that program is going to fail. And not only is it going to fail, but the American taxpayer is going to continue funding it even after it fails. So the one good thing about a government program or a government business is that it can never fail. With capitalism, if a business sucks and it's not getting business, what happens? It fails. But in a government-run business, and it sucks and it doesn't provide a good service or doesn't provide anything that the people need, it doesn't fail. In fact, it gets refunded over and over and over again. This is what we're doing. Nobody runs finances this way. Nobody treats their own finances this way. And honestly, nobody even thinks it's a good idea the way that things are being run right now. So why do they continue to do it this way? Because there is no urgency to change anything. These people in Congress, they don't care, folks. Not all of them, most of them. They're just looking for their next big ticket out of there. They're looking for their seat on Raytheon. They're looking for their seat on Boeing. I think, this is what I think that Donald Trump wins and he needs to dismantle all of this stuff. And we've seen him do that during his first term with the deregulation. Stop all this funding of stupid programs that we don't even know where the money goes. And I want an audit. We should have the country's largest auditing team in U.S. history go in and audit all these programs, find out where all the money went, and I want an audit from the money we sent to Ukraine. That's what I want. I want to know where this money's going, and I guarantee you, folks, in 10 or 20 years, when we finally do audit the money we sent to Ukraine, in 10 or 20 years, we're going to find out that there was billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars stolen by corruption. That's by the oligarchy. And I guarantee you, you dig in even deeper and you're going to find that money finds its way back into the pockets of senators, finds its way back into the pockets of NGOs. This is what is going on in our country. It is like a completely rogue machine. Like this thing has went off the rails and is like there is no oversight by the people. And not only that, but the people have no control over it. The majority of people did not want to send money to Ukraine, over 70%. And this was based poll after poll after poll. Nobody supported sending any more money to Ukraine. But yet, somehow, Ukraine gets $61 billion. And not only that, but there's talks of an agreement where the U.S. taxpayer will be funding Ukraine for another 10 years. No, folks, we can't continue on like this, man. I mean, it's just ludicrous. It doesn't even make sense. It's pure chaos. And so to go back to the point of the show is that the Cloward and Piven strategy that's being used with these protests and through all these colleges and universities is distracting the American people from all the madness that's happening right now in our Congress by the Biden administration. Massive spending on student loan relief to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars, a 10-year spending agreement with Ukraine, and the funding of these pro-Hamas rallies all throughout the country. So these protests are being funded by NGOs and by different organizations that probably most likely are getting some type of subsidy from the American taxpayer. So the American people are literally funding their own destruction. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what I would like to call the word of the day, insane. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, make sure to stay tuned to the next show. In the next segment, I want to get into what the Biden administration is doing to Title IX. Yes, they are absolutely destroying and erasing women in a humiliating way. And I got an article from, again, John Solomon from Just the News. The Biden administration is issuing rules and regulations instead of doing it the old-fashioned way through Congress. So they're essentially creating new law by subverting Congress. And they've been doing this with the ATF. What they do is they create these memorandums. They create these new rules for like Title IX or the pistol brace ban. So that what they do is they create these rules without going through Congress, and then the government institutions follow the rules. And so therefore they are essentially creating laws by subverting Congress. Now I ask you, do you think the founders wanted it to work that way? Do you think the founders would appreciate a presidential administration, the executive branch, subverting the House of Representatives and the Senate in order to change laws, in order to force government institutions and taxpayer-funded agencies? Essentially, law changes is what it is. The framers of this country, the founders, the writers of the Constitution would be rolling in their graves if they knew what the Biden administration has been up to, if they knew what the bureaucracy has been up to. They would be pissed off, probably in revolt, if they knew what was happening to this country right now. And look, if Biden somehow manages to get elected, I don't know how the American people will ever get their country back. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for tuning in. Like I said, make sure you stay tuned to the next segment. We're going to focus on this rule change that the Biden administration is making to Title IX. It's quite interesting, and these are the things that you need to know. Like I said earlier, the purpose of the show is to inform the audience so that the audience can get engaged in this fight against tyranny, because that is what we're watching. We are on a path to tyranny if we do not stop what is going on right now. We got to do a complete 180, and somebody's going to have to turn this ship, and we're going to need a better captain at the helm, period. And so right now we are like a rudderless ship that is just getting bashed by a bunch of waves. And this thing is going to go down if we don't get a new captain in there. This guy is unfit to be president. He is too corrupt. He is, well, I mean, if he's too old to be prosecuted, don't you think he's too old to be the president of the United States? Yeah, I thought so. I think everybody can pretty much agree on that. That's why Democrats are trying to flee from Joe Biden's crimes of willfully retaining documents. We got so much to get into, folks. So, all right, once again, thank you guys for tuning in. If you want to support the show, please follow the show on all social media. You can follow me on Twitter at Steven Torriello. You could follow the show on Rumble at The Steven Torriello Show. And if you want to get a hold of me directly, you can get a hold of me at StevenTorrielloShow@gmail.com. And on the next segment, I want to introduce an idea that I have. I kind of have an idea that I want to run by you guys to see what you guys think. So make sure you tune into the next segment. We're gonna talk about that and a lot of other things that we got to get into. So as always, once again, thank you guys so much for tuning into the show. I want you guys to have a good day. TGIF. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. God bless you, and God bless America. You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.